pray. O God, our help in ages past, hear our prayer as we turn to you in our hour of need. Help us remember in every hour, you are our light, our strength, and our comfort. Lord, in the midst of our national mourning for Owen Seymour Altair, bless what is done in this chamber. We may continue to build on the good foundation of those who have served as representatives and prime ministers of this nation. Pour your blessing upon all who serve as our leaders and representatives today. Give them the virtue of courage in these difficult times, the virtue of charity in all times. At the end of their days, the assurance that they have served their country and their Lord through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Let us remain standing and observe a minute's silence as a mark of tribute to the passing of our former Prime Minister, Alain Seymour Altair. You can now sit. This House is now in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, July 21st, 2020 to be deferred.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, July 21st be deferred.
The question is that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. The aforesaid minutes are deferred.
Announcements by your Honour this week. Messages from Her Excellency the Governor General, petitions, papers, government notices, private members notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills, statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43, and 44 be suspended for the remainder of today's sitting.
Questions that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 14, sir. In the name of the Honourable Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, to move the passing of a resolution to approve the Public Service General Order 2020.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, this matter is one which I don't believe should detain this chamber for overly long. And in fact, during the discussions with our parliamentary group on the matter at hand, it is, because we are amending schedules, it is actually quite technical. But before I do that, sir, there are in fact two resolutions. One in relation to the Public Service General Order 2020, and secondly, the Public Service Teachers Amendment Order of 2020. And sir, I believe that the subject matter of the two would be such that it would be prudent for this chamber to have a cognate debate in that regard, and therefore I ask if, with the chamber's leave, that we so agree.
Honourable Member, this is 14 and 15.
14 and 15.
The question is that orders 14 and 15 be part of a cognate debate as they are inextricably linked. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to speak on both of these matters together. As I said, it shouldn't engage the chamber's attention for too long, but I think, sir, it would be helpful to set a brief context. I think that all members of this chamber would be aware that in the closing days of our last term, we sought to completely transform. In the closing days of our last administration, Mr. Speaker, we sought to completely transform how the public service would function. We consulted extensively with the workers' representatives, put a lot of effort into it, and we enacted, I believe it was in December of 2007, a new public service bill. And for the most part, sir, I think that bill was well received by the public sector. They felt it was one that was long in coming, and I was pleased to have been the Attorney General who worked on getting that bill in a condition that it was ready for Parliament and ready for debate. The last administration made some amendments to the bill, but for the most part the bill has remained unchanged. Events, sir, have recently caused the members of the last administration to wake up and to criticize this government indirectly in relation to how we dealt with the Public Service Act. And that related specifically to criticisms of the validity of the appointment of a deputy commissioner. And let me say at the outset, sir, that difficulty is remedied in this order. But you would think, if the criticisms were accurate, that we would come to this chamber and just make an order in relation to the deputy commissioner's post. Not so, sir. As we investigated the history of dealings between 2008 and 2018 in relation to the public service, we discovered, in fact, that there were a large number of illegal, I'm using the term they used, a large number of illegal posts in the public service occupied by good and solid public servants who were going to work every single day and carrying out their duties. Now, I don't want to rake up this issue all over again, sir, but I do feel it is important to lay it to rest. I am simply making the point, Mr. Speaker, that in a situation where this administration is charged and vilified for doing all kinds of things in relation to a single post, the last administration, over a 10-year period, created improperly as much as 200 posts in the public service and placed public servants in them and did not rectify the defect. But, sir, it behooved them to call the kettle black and say that we were committing all ends of crimes and grievous wrongs and assaults on the sensibilities of right-thinking Barbadians, when in truth and in fact, sir, the records show, Mr. Speaker, that they created improperly a large number of posts, the vast majority of which continue today in contravention of the very act that they blame us for. Now, at the time when these things were being done or omitted from being done, the current leader of the Democratic Labour Party was a member of the Senate. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think she was a member of the Senate for both of their terms. Both of their terms she was a member of the Senate. And at no time did she notice the beam in their eye, but she proverbially notices and prances up about the mote in ours. Now, sir, we are not people, sir, who will see something wrong and fail to correct it. So, in correcting our own error, we are here today to correct, and I'm trying to give you the exact number, but I think the exact number is 200 plus. So we are here to correct our one error and all 200 plus of theirs. And no fuss, sir, no fanfare. Nobody is pointing fingers at the public servants, because a public servant who is offered a job takes that job in good faith and for the most part will come to work and discharge those responsibilities with diligence and commitment. And that's an important place to start, because these posts are occupied not by machines, not by faceless beings, but they are occupied by Barbadians in every way like you and me. And you know, the trade unionists in the other place announced that the deputy commissioner should pay back every penny of the salary that he's drawn. Now, if that were to happen, then all of the public servants, some of whom may even be in his union, some of whom he would profess to care for and to be their chief combatant, all of them would have to pay back every penny that they also earned between 2008 and the year of our Lord 2020. What a calamity that would be. Can you imagine that, sir? No, you know, there's one thing, it's been driven into our head, and you know, it is perhaps interesting that we do this debate today, coming just over 24 hours after the death of the former Prime Minister, because he was the person who championed and pushed the work on the Public Service Bill. The one thing I recollect many things he said, though my name is not Busy Williams. I recollect many things he said, sir. But one of the things that should govern all the thinking of all parliamentarians is that you can always change policy, but you should never change a principle. Because a principle, sir, is at the foundation of whatever you do. Fundamental human rights are principles. All those, they're principles. We understand it clearly. You don't change a principle, but you can always change your policy. Because policy becomes like dogma. You can say, well, that factual matrix gone now, so let me try something else. You don't be dogmatic about those things. But a principle, sir, principle you keep. And so I wonder what the spokesman in the other place for the opposition party will say about these 200 public servants having to pay back, in some cases, 11 years of salary to the public service because there was an omission in relation to their appointment. I wait to hear. Sir, an administration that recognizes that there are omissions, especially when there is no animus or no malintent in relation to them, must, as a matter of principle, put those things right. And so, sir, we are here to put right 10 years of public service posts that were created administratively and that were only supposed to be in existence for 3 years, because the Act says it can be in place, you can have a temporary post for 3 years, but beyond that, you can extend it, but after that extension, you must either create the post or down with it. Plain and simple. You must either create the post or down with it, to use Bajan jargon. But these posts were created, but never extended. The last administration created posts. The Act said it can continue for 3 years, but you can extend it for a further 3 and thereafter sudden death. But they created these posts and they were not extended. Well, you don't hear us prancing up saying that the last administration was paying people illegally, or that the people who were paid should have to pay back every cent. We are not motivated, sir, by that kind of, trying to find a good word. We're not motivated by those kinds of sentiments, sir. Because we have, by malice, sir, we don't treat public servants in that way. Some of them may work in my ministry, some may work in the ministry for the member for St. Thomas. Some may work in this parliament, I don't know. So, the defect that we are here to correct then, sir, is a large number of posts. I'm trying to find the exact number. A large number of posts which were created as an administrative temporary post, which is a thing that I guess is of value to the public service, because there are times when you need a particular job done, a particular functionary established, but you don't anticipate that you will need it for overly long, and you create a temporary post and you fill it. I think from time immemorial we've been doing that. And that, no difficulty there, but they continued after the time had come for them to be at an end. So the lesson to be learned from this is, in case the last administration, don't call the kettle black unless you first check your own track record. Because you will find, sir, that when you take your fist and point it at somebody, there are three fingers pointing back at you. And the leader, current leader of the party, was in the Senate, so she can't say, well, I was disconnected. She can't say that. That particular individual was a member, not just of the party, but she was a member of the Senate representing her administration. And therefore, she is as culpable as the others. So instead of being first critic, she should perhaps be first penitent. Sir, it is a thick document. And in fact, all of the changes are in the schedule. Perhaps there could be a more efficient way of doing this. This particular order has 14 schedules, and each schedule, there are no names in this document, just offices, what pay scale they're in, and the number of offices that now obtain. And what are some of those offices, sir? I'm happy to share with the chamber. Some of those posts created: Foreign Service Officer, System Analyst and Programmer, Information Technology Officer, Community Mental Health Sister, Financial Controller. So all the posts weren't at the lower grade, sir. Financial Controller is a very senior post. Prison Officer and Network Administrator. These were some of the posts that were created. And my record says, sir, that between 2009 and May of 2018, some 328 posts were created by the last administration, all of which are yet to be established. 328, sir. Between 2009 and May of 2018, 328 posts were created, all of which are yet to be established. And of those posts, 183, that's the right number, are over 6 years old and therefore are being occupied by individuals in breach of the statute. So we are here today, sir, to put wrong things right for those people. 183 individuals, sir, are sitting in posts today that have no standing in law to exist. And that is what we are fixing, to give those people an opportunity now to be appointed, because those posts are today being established. Now, sir, if there's one thing about how we have operated with the public service since we came to government, it hasn't been one of consultation only, sir. It has been one of empathy. I remember, sir, as we had to sit down and grapple with the fine details of the work program, it was obvious that we were going to have to make some changes in how the public service was structured. We were going to have to make changes in relation to the size of the public service. You know, one of those things that we did, we sat down with every department and we went through the exercise of looking at the various posts. We tried, where possible, to do last in, first out. We looked at what were the demands of the public sector at the time. We tried to get rid of all the anachronistic posts like clerk typists. All of these are things that we did. And we only permitted those individuals who the department said we can sacrifice these, not in the sense of, perhaps that's not the best word to use, but the departments were saying these are posts that we could perhaps do without. And when those people were sent home, we made sure that they were sent home with severance payments, something that the public service does not have. Because the public service does not admit of severance payments. But we made sure that we structured things so they can go home with money. We also made sure that wherever possible, if opportunities arose, that those people who were sent home will be the first to get brought back, sir. In my ministry, I am able to say firsthand that we required services of a number of people, and we went back for the people who were sent home and said, come back and perform these services on contract. We have a digitization program that is about to start, and every single member of cabinet is operating on the basis that those people who were sent home in the work program and who want to come back, that they represent the corpus of people from among whom the first choices will be made. Empathy, sir. We've trained them even after they've left the public service so that they can come back and fulfill those jobs. Empathy and commitment, sir. And that empathy and commitment extends, that attitude, that spirit of brotherliness and being responsible for the people around us. Instead of, man, he should be made to pay back every cent. We say, no, let us fix what was wrong because it is not his fault. That is empathy, sir. That is caring about your brother. And part of that exercise requires us today to deal with these 328 posts, and of that 328, the 183 were the individuals who, and I don't even think those people know, Mr. Speaker. If you pick up a phone and call any public servant and ask him what's the status of his post, he can't tell you because that's not his job. That's not his responsibility to go work every day and do the best that he can do. That's what his job is, not to be peeping behind to see, is my post legal, is it illegal? Will somebody call and tell me I got to pay back every penny? Can you imagine the shock waves, sir, if we were to follow that attitude, the shock waves that was sent through the public service? 183 people, sir, will be sent into a total state of panic and mania, wondering what kind of mad people we are operating this country. So, Mr. Speaker, that is what we are here to deal with today. The exercise has been painstaking, but I thank the members of the Ministry of the Public Service for going through it, because the public service has a large number of employees. They have to go through a large number of posts. They have to go through 10 years of appointments to try to determine exactly who is and who is not. But sir, if we, and perhaps it isn't even worth mentioning, but there are some people who would find all kinds of mechanisms to get rid of people. This, if we were so minded, this might even be a good one. Post isn't legal, so go home. But that's not how this Barbados-led party administration operates, sir. That's not how we are. That is not who we are. That's not who we are. All of these people, by the end of this process in the Senate, will be waking up to a new day where they are in occupation of a post that is established, and because it is the right thing to do. In relation to the teachers, sir, the teachers' amendment is a very slight one, and we've just inserted clause 9, which deals essentially with appointments of individuals in the same way. So, Mr. Speaker, as I said, this is not one that should engage the attention of the chamber overly long. I welcome the comments of members on it. It requires a debate in both this chamber and in the other place, and I commend it to both this chamber and to all of the members of the other place, because it is the decent thing to do. Somebody suggested to me that I should read off the name of every single public servant who would benefit, or every single public servant who, based on those calls, would be thrown out on the air. But that, we don't operate in that kind of invidious manner, sir. These are our brothers and our sisters. I don't know who they are, but I know that they go to work every day and they serve the people of this country to the best of their ability. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't believe I can add any more. If I keep talking, I will just end up repeating myself. It is something that this administration commits to dealing with promptly. We've not been in the business of creating posts, but I give this chamber the assurance that that we will not allow public servants to have to face this kind of scenario again. It is a dreadful thing, sir, when you now have to be dealing with people and posts for going back as far as 11 years. I mean, that is scandalous. What it means is that individuals who should have been mindful of what was being done simply did not pay attention, and that is not going to be the hallmark of this administration. We will be paying attention to the big things and also to the little things, and I therefore ask, sir, that these resolutions do now pass.
Beg to second that.
One at a time, sir.
Beg to move, sir, that the Public Service General Laws of 2020 do now pass.
Beg to second that, sir.
The question is that the aforementioned resolution do not pass. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Order number 15, sir.
Yes.
Do you want to speak?
You didn't hear what it moved? Yeah, come on, say. Correct. Right. Yes, this speak. You can be careful. Present your honor. Turn on the mic, honorable member, honorable leader opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and not to detain us overly long, but just to make a couple of comments. I think it is unfortunate that the honorable member, the Honourable Attorney General, should choose to root much of his submission in this familiar saying that the pot should not call the kettle black. I make reference to the fact that the former administration, not now represented in this parliament, would have been critical of the government for its missteps around the business of appointments, whereas in fact the record being put to us today suggests that the administration was guilty, the administration of that time was guilty of the same. My point is, this is more than a game of darts or war between administrations. We are talking about people's lives. And therefore, what I hear the honorable member for St. Joseph to say is We may have messed about with the lives of some public servants, people's lives. But you can't criticize us because you did it too, and you did it in a worse way. That is my translation of what I heard. We continue as political administrations in Barbados, by our own admission, to play with people's lives, to play with people's futures. I heard with my own ears, and both of them are functioning quite well. The Honourable Member for St. Joseph, the Attorney General, the Honourable Member who last spoke, say that if you ask these people in question what is their status vis-a-vis employment in the public service, they don't know. They can't tell you. Mr. Speaker, that is very telling. It is an indictment. It is an indictment upon the institution of government, the process of governance in Barbados, that at this level, we can stand to admit that if you ask a large swath, a large number of public servants what their legal status is, they can't tell you. And we live in the day when there are the stipulations of the Employment Rights Bill. Employers are supposed to properly advise employees as to where they stand. Now, government, in my view, Mr. Speaker, ought to be the model employer and must set the standards. And there's so much wrong out there in the world of employer-employee relationships in the private sector world. There's so much that is wrong and that needs to be corrected. And we're working on some of them, and slowly, yes. But if government can't provide the model for standards and a properly functioning regulatory framework, then we're lost. And essentially, that is what I am hearing here today. You can come to correct this, and that must be done. But you can't glibly say, ask all of them, call them by name and ask them, and they cannot tell you. You can imagine that. You can imagine the government is admitting that if you ask these large numbers of public servants what their legal status is, they can't tell you. There's something wrong, fundamentally wrong about that. We can't come and say the pot shouldn't call the kettle black. It's not about the pot so much or the kettle. It is about the water in those instruments that is feeling the pressure, the heat, the people. We got to deal with that. Our member, James Central, knows what I'm talking about. Very, very well. And I don't want to be in any way controversial. I'm not even seeking to be scathing in my submission with reference to the current administration. I am saying that there are systemic failures, and part of the reason why these systemic failures persist over the years across administrations is because we lose sight of the people. The people in the mix. But there are people here with lives and with futures. And we've got to take that into consideration. We can't play with people's lives. We can't reduce this matter in the context of its persistence to being one about administrative considerations. We can't simply say that somebody, some technocrat in the public service, got it wrong, did not do what they were supposed to do, and there was an oversight. There's a minister of the civil service. There's a minister responsible for public service. There's a Minister of Labor. We can't just pass it off as an oversight or a deficiency in the efforts, the approaches of the public service machinery that's responsible for civil administration. No, we're talking about people. And I just want to register that because, Mr. Speaker, we are talking about people. They're people with careers that they want to see developed. And they need to know where they're going. They need to be in a position to make their plans. They are people with children for whom they want to plan and project as well. It's a serious matter. And we're here to correct perhaps a wrong. But in so doing, we can't glibly pass over it and make this a game between pots and kettles. This is about people. In this context, we call them public servants. They provide a service to the public of Barbados without which this society, including this institution right here, of which we are a part, cannot properly function. And I say that strongly, not intending to be an attack on the administration today, but an attack upon a system that perpetuates this kind of deficiency and failure. Having said that, and perhaps I should have said this at the start and not at the finish, I want to add my voice in commendation and compliments, congratulations to my honourable friend from St. Michael West Central, who is now not in the seat, but who has been recently appointed to the Cabinet of Barbados, and I think deservingly so. And I would want to record my appreciation of him and the service that he's been rendering the country.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't intend to delay the chamber too much longer, but I do feel that I need to lend my voice to the introduction of these two orders presented by the member for St. Joseph. At the outset, Mr. Speaker, let me just say that as Minister of Education, representing a number of teachers and other professionals within the educational system, the matter before this chamber today, I know will bring some relief to several of our post holders in the system. While the Attorney General has alluded to the fact that people are, in some cases, and have been for some time, uncertain about their status, it is not said, I believe, with any delight. It is said as a matter of fact that some people oftentimes have been asking questions in various departments within their ministries about their status and whether the posts will be regularized at some point in time, and they have in some cases not gotten the answers that they have been requesting. I think it is therefore fair to say that there are a lot of people who have been out there in limbo. As the Honourable Leader of the Opposition has stated, it doesn't make it right. Both administrations have presided over things that have not been right in the course of history. But what we are here to do today, through the Honourable Attorney General, is to correct things that have gone wrong. And I can certainly not remain silent. I have to support this measure because I do believe that it will give those persons across the professions and across the service a certain comfort coming out of the passage of these orders today, in knowing that they are no longer in limbo, in knowing that they have a certain level of job security and a certain level of comfort. I think, sir, we take these things often for granted, but I do know from my discourse with certainly the unions over the course of the last 2 years that these are burning issues for the union leaders. They are burning issues certainly for the post holders as well. And the reality is that sometimes when there is uncertainty, it also impacts the ability and the focus of people to do their jobs, sir. I think that this government recognizes that regardless of whose fault it has been that we have gotten to this point, that we have a responsibility to correct what has gone wrong. So the persons who will be impacted by these two orders this morning, sir, I think they will breathe a sigh of relief in the knowledge that this administration has not come to office and certainly just talked about it or tried not to correct the situation. But in truth and in fact, we have actually sought to bring some measure of relief to all of those individuals that have been affected over the course of the past few years. And sir, there are big jobs and there are small jobs that have been impacted. And I think that is very important because oftentimes you may think that it is a particular type of job that persons have not been paying attention to in terms of regularizing. But we have seen in the relation to this matter, sir, there were a number of posts that were created, such as foreign service officer, systems analysts, programmers, information technology officers, community health sisters, financial controllers, prison officers, network administrators, that were simply not properly regulated. And for many of those persons, obviously not having that security, as I said, has no doubt played on their mind, and I'm glad that we've been able to bring that type of relief, certainly, to those persons this morning. Sir, it also brings to mind the fact that you can't come to office and condone things that previous administrations have done badly. I say that, sir, because it is easy sometimes to come to office and certainly just let it be business as usual. There are lots of reforms that we have been trying to achieve over the course of the past few years, last 2 years, certainly in the last few months. Has it been an easy path to achieve all of the transformational things that we would like to do, sir? I would have to say it hasn't been easy. We are trying to change a culture. We are trying to change a society's way of doing things. We're trying to change the public service mindset. And we're trying to do all of that while trying to keep this country afloat, while trying to transform an economy as well, sir. And therefore, I put that in a context because this cannot be seen as any trivial matter this morning, because we are again trying to correct things that have been left lying for several years, which have impacted on the livelihood of several persons. And we have a responsibility to make sure that we make wrong things right, sir. I don't think the Attorney General, as alluded to by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, in any way sought to indicate that you can't criticize this administration because the other side did it, but they did it in a worse way. I believe, as I'm sure the Honourable Member knows, 2 wrongs don't make a right. But I think he has to be fair. I think somewhere in his presentation, I do believe that he supports the measure, while perhaps not openly stating so, and perhaps trying to be more critical than anything. But I do think that deep in his bosom, he too, having been a member of government, understands that even sometimes with the best intention and the best will, it is not always easy to come to office and accomplish all of the things that you want to do within a short time frame. And I think, yes, I'm hearing him say, sir, on the sidelines that it is true. And I expect him to be honest, even if it is only in relation to that matter, because he has certainly served this country in government. He has held portfolios. He knows what it is to change a culture. He knows what it is to correct the wrong things that have been done by previous administrations. And so I know that quietly he does support this and he does support what we are doing. Maybe he may feel that we didn't do it fast enough. But I know he, in his heart of hearts, I honestly believe that he is supportive of the measures. He is right that there have been systemic failures over the years in relation to how we have dealt with staffing issues, and those are things that have to be corrected. I, for one, believe that in terms of industrial relations, we have to obviously improve the relationship with our staff. And whether that is from within my own ministry in relation to how we interface with unions, how we interface with our members. Sir, there's a lot of baggage that people have been carrying over the years as it relates to dealing with industrial relations. And I think at the crux of it, we have to be in a position within each of the ministries to be able to find a way to ensure that we deal with matters head on, that our HR departments are properly strengthened, that our personnel departments are also strengthened, that certainly the Ministry of the Civil Service is also strengthened. I mean, to say that there's a Minister of the Civil Service is also, in the other breath, also to say that there are so many other things that the person who is responsible for government, for the ministry and all the other ministries has to do as well. And therefore, you have to make sure that you have competent persons working within your departments, but also working across ministries to ensure that issues are nipped in the bud early. There is nothing worse than not being able to have intervention from an early stage when people are asking questions about their own job security or whether there are HR matters that are coming to the fore. And therefore, I think the lesson for all of us in this is really, you know, while we may be in a rush sometimes to create positions because we recognize that there are things that need to be solved quickly, in the same token, we have to have the same urgency applied to ensuring that procedures are properly followed and that we equip our staff across government departments with the requisite skills to be able to, as quickly as we create a position, to be able to put whatever is necessary to be put in place. So, sir, I again want to support these two orders, to echo on behalf, I think, of all of the persons within certainly the teaching profession that have been affected and within the Ministry of Education that have been affected, certainly, sir, prior to today, to really say thank you to the AG and to the others for being able to not just see this as a debate that was raised by the leader of the Democratic Labour Party or others in the public domain, and but rather to see this as something that, while we are cleaning up one thing, that we are man enough and woman enough to be able to say equally that there are other things that need to be cleaned up as well. And therefore, this party stands proudly behind its record. It is not afraid to run from having made a mistake or in any way trying to correct what has been done before. And sir, I have seen, you know, in the last couple years, certainly before coming to office, an administration not willing to admit where it was going wrong and not willing to correct the things that it needed to. And again, I hear the aside, sir, which I'm sure you heard, that the leader of the opposition is also agreeing with me that those words are quite true. Therefore, sir, as I said, I believe we are perhaps on the same page, even if he has said it differently. That the Honourable Member also will support this, these orders, and that we can start to bring to some clarity the lives of persons who have been affected by this. So I do support the orders, and I give my full support to the move.
Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I shall just make a brief intervention, sir, to indicate how happy I am that this resolution has been brought to this Honourable Chamber, especially at this time when so many thousands of people are meeting tremendous challenges and the element of fear has really taken over their lives. I want to indicate that I had that unfortunate experience for 11 years as well, from 1970 to 1981, with no appointment and just temporary ones, no permanent appointment, temporary ones, where you're not so sure if the next day you will be able to go up to work, to be able to uplift yourself and your families. And therefore, I understand the hardship and the loss of wanting to have the courage to go to work, to be able to produce in a way that most workers are enthusiastic and we wish to. And therefore, it is a wonderful moment today. And I am proud to be a member of this distinguished Barbados Labour Party that is more than 80 years old, and for the contribution that it has made towards workers starting from the time of our great, excellent Grantley Adams and coming to the fore, and consecutive Barbados Labour Party governments looking after the needs and the interests of people and helping to propel them to the level where they are comfortable, they're independent, and they develop that element of pride and satisfaction in offering service not only in the public sector, but indeed in the private sector as well. It is a terrible inconvenience. That element of fear, the anger, the whole notion of not being promoted because you're only temporary, and that you could be sent home at a short period of notice. In the past administration, sir, between 1994 and 2007, I can speak boldly of lending my support to my astute leader, now deceased, who with his teams of members of cabinet and others were able to look towards extending that element of empathy, support, comfort, and hope to those persons who were working in the government sector for so many years without security of tenure. And therefore, that aspect of the legislation, sir, that was passed by the last Barbados Labour Party government up until 2007, ensured that between 1999 and 2007, we left in 2008, that maids or janitors, general workers, and other persons down the line, as well as those regular government workers, were able to have security of tenure. Indeed, sir, many of them were not able to go home with any money in their hands, called a gratuity. The Barbados Labour Party ensured that at that time, those persons be made permanent employees in NCC and Ministry of Public Works, and persons who would be considered to be general workers and nobody. They're the ones who keep our streets clean. They're the ones who make sure that our schools are well looked after. They're the ones who work across the length and breadth of government, and people consider it to be insignificant, but they're the ones who make sure that our health is kept in a condition that we can go and use the bathroom and not have to be worrying. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I believe that this is the right thing that this government has done. We know of the challenges that we inherited up until 2008 May, and we know of the BERT program and the engagement of the IMF that would have caused some discomfort among workers. But I am confident, sir, that going forward, once we get out of this pandemic era, that the people of Barbados will be able to see even more being done and other measures instituted that will ease the plight of our workers in this country. We believe in people empowerment, sir, and we will continue to work towards ensuring that persons get security of tenure as long as they fit the profile. And therefore it says, yes, we're going to continue to work with the unions and the other institutions, and C2SAB and the other institutions that constitute, to ensure that everybody in Barbados that is a government worker or a private sector worker receives the benefits that he or she should get. I also want, Mr. Speaker, to indicate that while we are doing this, it is incumbent upon government and the private institutions to ensure that workers are properly, that there is a proper appraisal system put in place to be able to measure the contribution of workers. So there must be training on a regular basis, because some people, because of illnesses, because of their own personal issues, sometimes it is a partner in the household, there's confrontation, there's illness of a child, or a mother who has Alzheimer's, or even a father, or somebody who is disabled and persons can't get to work on time. That element of empathy should still be there, but the communication from those who are in charge of those persons in the institutions should be coming through from their training to be able to listen and understand and give them a chance and give them an opportunity. You can't finish at 4:30 now because you were out for the 2 hours, but perhaps tomorrow morning you might want to come in a little earlier. Or in the evening, you might want to put in an extra hour, do a flexi time kind of thing. But the rigidity sometimes that is in the governmental sector causes a lot of people to be disenchanted and to be grumbling all the time and feeling they're picking on me, nobody likes me. I see it and I hear it every day because I was in the system for 25 years. And therefore, I think it is incumbent upon us to make sure that those positions of the appraisal system let people know where they have made errors, where they have not been as professional as they should be, and take out the anger and the malice over personalities, because that is a lot that you get in a small society. Everybody knows each other, and they promote the person who is a friend of a minister or a priest or bishop or some other person or supervisor in charge of some other entity in the government, but overlook the ordinary poor man or woman who strives every day but with tremendous difficulties to be able to deliver. I know that promotion is critical. And if you are there subbing, we call it, but that is what you're doing. You're not so sure when next you will go home, when next you will get that contract renewed and so on. I think it is important that we look at how promotion is done. And not because of favoritism or nepotism, but to make sure that those that are promoted, they meet the criteria for doing it. I also think, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this opportunity will be able to help persons to better plan their lives, what they want to do, where they want to go. Because this kind of waiting for 10 and 11 years for an appointment can create so many stressors. You can't plan your life. There are a number of persons who had applied for a house, for a mortgage, to be able to improve the quality or to own, because ownership is really very important to our people, and correctly so. And then because you're not appointed, you go to the bank to access the funds. The bankers say, well, we had planned it and things were working out, but now we have learned that you are not appointed, you may go home anytime. We can't allow you to invest in it or to even make the effort. Similarly, the mortgage companies, they're not going to be able to treat to you in a manner. And that is why I always hurt when I know that the General Workers Fund at Ministry of Housing would have been eliminated by the last administration. Our workers, especially those that we may call down the line, but are so important to our system, those general workers and so, could get a $10,000 or $5,000. That had been eliminated, and many of them are cringing now under the pressure because they can't do a little maintenance and put on that little water toilet and extend the house in a way because the families are growing. So I'm saying once they get the security of tenure in these two areas that we have mentioned just now, it gives them that strength and that pride to know I am serving a purpose. I can continue to go on to get that kind or give that kind of service to my country or the institution of which I am a part. And so the stability in the job, and I can probably see the smiles on the faces and the rejoicing of those persons who will be included in these over 200 persons that will be getting their security of tenure as a result of what has transpired. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I frowned in 2018, just before that last general election, where the Minister of Education was going to the ministry and to the Urdistan and handing people appointment letters in their hand. I've never seen it or heard of it before, and I pray that this government does not bring the indignity in the lives of anybody. I'll be very disappointed and I will not support it, because as far as I know, when you are appointed, the instrument passes through the hand of Her Excellency, and then persons get them in the mail and they respond to the letters. But to be standing as a political person and handing out those appointment letters says, you are getting this because of me, the politician. And I know how that may sway the minds of people because they want it. After all, it is a need and very urgent. So I'm happy that this Barbados Labour Party government has never done it before, and I do not want for it to happen at all. Mr. Speaker, I close finally because I know that once these persons, these individuals, these workers in the government can get their letters of appointment in their hands, because it will be properly regularized, it will reduce some stressors. And I can tell you, and all of us in here, and those out there who are politicians, and those who are trying to aspire to become politicians, know. People come and say, I would like to do so and so with the place. I would like to buy a little car because we live so far from the workplace, but I can't do it because I'm not so sure if I'm going to get my, I can't even remember what you call it now, renewed. What do you call it? Assignment? I'm not so sure. There's another term. But they're not so sure, so they don't want to take that chance to go into those muddy waters, and then people come and pick up the car, because that's a very common thing now. Pick up the car, pick up the house, leave you stranded, and then more stressors, you're down at psychiatric hospital, or there's abuse in the household because everybody is on edge as a result. I know and I believe that civil servants in Barbados and workers generally across the country will want to be recognized and to be given that opportunity to be able to be appointed so that they can build their families, that they can continue to produce, that they can continue to improve the quality of their lives and pay their bills. And of course, where there's an opportunity for promotion, that they will be recognized for the contribution that they have made. And I know people will say, well, some civil servants don't answer the phone. I can't answer it either. Mr. Speaker, sir, you can't answer all the calls either. But we try to work as best as we can and respond as best as we can to be able to make it happen. But there are times when you have a client in front of you and the situation is so tenuous. And if you miss and answer that phone, you lose the attention of that individual. They feel that you have abandoned them. You make them feel less than a human being. If you're a social worker, you will know, and sir, you are a distinguished social worker of many years, and therefore you understand to what I am speaking. But I wish that at least with the training and with the comfort that they will receive from these appointments, that they will be able to better fit back in those who have become disillusioned, fit back into the profile that is expected of them because they have agreed to come to public life and to serve. And once they do their best, at the end of the day, I know that angels can't do more. Not all will, but I believe 95 to 96% of our civil servants are excellent and will continue to grant or offer the service that is necessary. And I would wish for those who are in charge, cut out the stigma and discrimination, because there are people who are working in environments, they may have had a toe taken off because of diabetes, and they are treated as though they're the animals in the yard. There are some who are living with HIV, and because one person gets to know, that person is vilified. That person is shunted in a corner as a result. We all have to act professionally, whether we are appointed or not, so that workers feel we are safe, our jobs are secure, and we are here to serve the public of Barbados and others. We are going to do the best that we can. And so I highly commend the Honourable Attorney General and the team that would have been working together. And indeed, this government, at this time when we are going through so many challenges, will bring this resolution to the fore so that Barbadians can get a relief at the end of the day, coming so close to Emancipation Day, to know the government cares about you. You care about the clients who face you every day, and therefore I highly lend my support to this resolution and pray that as time goes on and the economy improves and COVID goes back where it came from, wherever that is, and leave us in the world at peace to be able to continue to reach out, touch, and change lives around. I believe that we can do it as proud Barbadians. And those persons who are working in the civil service, we know that they're all black people. Black lives matter. And this is another chapter in showing that we care for the people who serve us day and night, including those who are serving this honorable chamber, sir. I wish to thank you for giving me the moment.
Honourable Member put on the mic. Honourable Member St. James South.
I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I rise to give my support to the bill that's before the Honourable Chamber because, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we treat our citizens with dignity. It is important that we understand and be responsive to their needs, that we see beyond using people to get work done without caring for their status, without caring for the security of tenure, without caring about the impact we have when we are tardy in regularizing their status. Mr. Speaker, Barbados is in urgent need of being able to bring the necessary reforms to the civil service in order that we can improve in our effectiveness, in our efficiency, because Barbados is now faced with very challenging conditions emerging out of the COVID. And it's going to call on every single person to make the necessary changes, to perform, to adapt to the various structures that will be made different. And how can we, in all honesty, call on our civil service when there are things that, as leaders, we have been negligent in relation to their well-being and to their peace of mind? If we need people to be responsive to what we are asking of them, it is very necessary that we are responsive to the needs which they have. I have to share, Mr. Speaker, that on coming into office, one of the things I was confronted with within the first 3 to 4 weeks of taking up position was to have some civil servants quietly come to my door and ask, "Ma'am, can I have a word with you?" And the story was forever the same. Even in my constituency, people would seek me out and they would put their case before me. I have been in the service for 14 years. I've been in the service for 7 years. I've been in the service for 6 years, and I have not been appointed. And to be honest, sir, I was shocked to discover that this was the case. And they shared with me the discomforts that they experienced in finding themselves in a temporary position in which they could not take their lives forward. Some felt and some believed that perhaps it was purpose work. Some felt it was a form of victimization. Very often they were unsure as to why after 14 years, why after 10 years, why after 7 years, I have not been able to be appointed. Is there a problem with my work? Is there a problem with me in my relationships with team members? What is it that I am failing in that has caused me to be singled out, not to be appointed? Mr. Speaker, I would have been unable to respond to explain to them why a government would be negligent in ensuring that people were appointed. I was unable to explain to them why it was taking so long. And what brought me great regret is I remember when the Barbados Labour Party administration in 2007, between 2006 and 2007, I remember that we had made the determination that we were going to appoint officers who had been serving for over 4 years within the service, that we were going to regularize their status. Why? Because we recognized that these persons were unable to go and get a loan. Now, in some cases, Mr. Speaker, they may have had a child that they wanted to support to go to further their education, maybe overseas, and they needed to get a loan in order to facilitate that dream of their child. But they could not, because the lending agencies were reluctant to take a risk on giving someone who was not appointed. Some were living in conditions, Mr. Speaker, where they may have been living at their mother's house. The house was now in disrepair and in urgent need of being renovated. But again, by not being appointed, they were not eligible to take on the risk of a loan, and therefore they had to continue to scotch where they were and to continue in conditions that were less than acceptable to them and their families. In other words, Mr. Speaker, what was happening to the lives of those civil servants who were awaiting appointment, it was that we were injuring their lives. We were delaying their dreams. We were denying them the advancement that they deserved. And under those conditions, Mr. Speaker, how could you expect that people would be excited about their work, that they would be excited to always and continuously give of their best when their personal lives are hedged in and made difficult and made limited because they were not appointed, and a team of persons who set themselves up as leaders of the country could not take the opportunity so to do. So in 2006-2007, the then BLP administration had made the determination to make sure to formalize those appointments and to generate those instruments. On the election, Mr. Speaker, the change in government resulted in the new administration laying aside and not publishing in the Gazette those people whom we had agreed to have appointed. And, sir, one can only call that an act of malice. One can only call that an act of bad-mindedness, to use a Barbadian term. And we pondered as to why they would single out these civil servants who had so richly deserved their appointment to lay those appointments aside when we had already determined that they would be formalized. All it required, Mr. Speaker, was to gazette it. Mr. Speaker, I know that we have to use our language carefully when speaking of different administrations, but I will tell you, I was deeply disappointed by an administration that had tried to characterize itself as one that cares for people, that cares for the small man, the ones who are the saviors of Barbados. To do that to thousands of civil servants, to deny them by refusing to gazette it, I think was an act of malice and unworthy of that party. That is why today I am happy, I am delighted, I am glad that we are taking the opportunity here and now to regularize the status of these workers. Sir, it is going to be too late to bring value to some people, because I've met some civil servants who are retiring this year, early next year. Too short now to bring value to them. But I'm hoping for those that it will be able to help them put things right and give them security of tenure, and more importantly, peace of mind, that they now will take the opportunity to be able to move forward with their lives and to be able to do all the things for their family that they want to do, because they now have been able to be in a job in which they are secure in relation to their job. Mr. Speaker, I feel strongly that this will be of great benefit to the civil service. I feel, sir, that achieving this particular level of appointment, of being sure of their jobs, is going now to create a different environment, a different mindset in those who are going to receive this. Sir, I believe that this will act as a powerful motivator to them, to cause them to be willing now that some of this pressure is removed from off of their heads, removed from off of their families, that when we give the call, Mr. Speaker, to rise to the occasion, to move to another level, that they would be willing to so do. One of the things, Mr. Speaker, that needs to be addressed within the civil service in relation to jobs and in relation to people is that we have to be able to find a way to change the morale of civil servants. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that when people get up on mornings, they should look forward to going to work. I believe that when they get up on mornings, they must feel a sense of importance in terms of the job that they're going to, that their job matters, and how well they execute that job means something to the well-being of people. In my former life, Mr. Speaker, I constantly told workers Barbados is only as strong as what is going on within the minds of every Barbadian every day. And that it was imperative that Barbados is able to start building a nation of persons who understand our national policy and who understand how their dreams will be accomplished because the national policy is on target, it's well executed, and therefore every person must contribute to that. I am hoping, therefore, that those now who will enjoy security of tenure, that their morale will rise and their hearts, their minds, their ears will be open to understand the critical role each of them can play in moving this nation forward. Indeed, sir, I often say that 30 people can get together and make a determination about leading a country into political independence. And once you share the message with the people and you're convincing in your answers to them the concerns they may have about going towards independence, 30 people can sit down and make that a reality. But sir, when it comes to economic independence requires that every single Barbadian puts his or her hand to the plow and work towards making Barbados a nation that is prosperous and successful. Sir, not only will the appointments create the security of tenure and therefore the peace of mind and hopefully raise the morale of our civil servants, I think that there's another benefit that is to be derived. Until one works in government, the average citizen does not have the awareness as to the impact the civil service has on their everyday life. They generally see the civil service as something they do not engage on an everyday basis, except they have to go and pay a license, except they have to go and apply for something, or they have to go and get permission for something, or they have to engage the court system. And so, very often, people who work within both the private and public sector have no idea of the far-reaching impact the job of the civil servant has on their life and their own prosperity. If we are able to appreciate the kind of impact it has, it would then make sense why, as a government, we should make every effort to make our civil servants comfortable and happy, give them the necessary leadership that they need, provide them with a consistent system of discipline, and give them interesting work to do every day that engages their mind, their energy and passion, and so by their effort be able to take Barbados forward. One of the things, when you look at an economy and you look at one of the things that can drag it back, as I said, how the civil service works impacts on that. I just want to give a brief example because I want people to understand why it is important what we are doing today. Mr. Speaker, within your economy, you may have, for example, someone who wishes to start a business. Let's say it's a laundromat. And the person would like to engage 15 workers. They've made their application, they've identified the place in which they're going to operate. They have started a process of interviewing people, looking to bring them on to work, and they've sent off for the goods and equipment that they need to start their business. When that equipment, Mr. Speaker, gets to the port, and there are long delays at the port in clearing that container, if there are licenses that they have to have, if there are inspections they need to have, and those things are delayed, what it means, Mr. Speaker, every week that business is not completed by our civil service to enable our private sector to move forward, you're doing a number of things. You're delaying jobs. Because you are delaying jobs, you're delaying consumption in your economy. Because the business has not started in the way that it should, it is not able to buy supplies, and therefore other businesses suffer. And because they're not generating a profit as yet, government cannot get revenues. Just, sir, because of delays at the port, delays in getting licenses, delays in getting inspections. Therefore, a demotivated civil service, a civil service that has other concerns, because they're not comfortable in the environment, will find that they may not focus in performing those everyday tasks with the speed and dispatch that the economy requires. Therefore, regularizing the status of those workers is one of the means of helping to improve the output and productivity of the service, and therefore fueling growth and energy into your wider economy. That's one of the reasons why it's so important. That is why it's counterproductive to frustrate your civil service. And so, Mr. Speaker, what we have done today, as was shared earlier, this Barbados Labour Party can focus on things large and small. We can deal with the external and the internal. We can walk and chew gum. What we are seeking to do today is to ensure that we do not continue to leave people behind. And when we fail to regularize their status, we are causing a set of civil servants to be left behind. And that would never accord with our philosophy. It will never accord with our values. It will never accord with our heart. One of the things I was very pleased to be able to say, as I shared with you, I had civil servants both in my constituency and in ministries who put the question, when am I going to get appointed? So I'm very happy to be able to report to them that this administration that cares about people, that cares about their well-being, we have taken the step today to regularize their situation. That we are indeed, as is mentioned, to make wrong things right, because it's the honest and right thing to do. And so we can hold our heads up and know that as a government that cares about every citizen, a government that cares about the future of every Barbadian, large and small, regardless of where they find themselves, that through this act today, we are committing ourselves to moving Barbados and all of its citizens forward. And we're asking the civil service to work with us. We've got a lot of work ahead of us to do. The cabinet under the Prime Minister has made a lot of effort to put things in place to help us weather our COVID. But it will mean changes. It will mean changes in how our civil service works. So we're going to be calling on them to rise to the occasion again. We're going to be calling on them to look at improvements that need to take place in the way in which we do business in the civil service. We're going to be asking of them to participate in the training. We're going to be asking of them to participate in the changing of our processes so that we can be more efficient and accomplish more as a government and therefore accomplish more as a nation. And I would have been embarrassed to have to ask them to so do if we had not done what we did today in ensuring that we've regularized their status. And I trust it would bless them, it would bless their families, it would bless the community, and more importantly, that it would bless the entire nation of Barbados. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. Philip West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, this is again another example of this administration following the mantra, a better life for our people. Mr. Speaker, I would be fairly passionate about this because I remember as a young man leaving school that it was under this very Barbados Labour Party that I was employed and then appointed to a position at government industrial schools. And I know from experience how I felt having to be basically at the particular point in time outside of my mom, the next breadwinner in the household. And the security of being able to know that as a young man, I had the opportunity to go to a bank or a credit union or whatever. It was some sort of a secure job that could help to propel me to get the things that I needed. It's extremely, and I can't state it enough, extremely important to me as an individual. So I can understand quite well what this means for those persons who are going to benefit from getting their appointments. And I don't fool myself, because Mr. Speaker, while we sit here and we can pontificate about, you know, how great this is and all of this, and some people could talk about all the problems that they face with changing of governments and other things, there's a constant within the civil service, which I think oftentimes we don't pay a lot of attention to. I think oftentimes we don't celebrate it enough. We can always find the times when we can criticize. But the truth is, administrations will come and go. But those civil servants are the ones who have to carry on the work, regardless of which political party is in. And there comes a time when we as individuals, not as politicians, not as doctors and lawyers and all that, not as that, but as individuals, must be able to recognize the role that the civil service plays. You also need, and I heard one of my colleagues speak about motivating people. We need to be part and parcel of that. We need to let people know that what they do is appreciated. We need also to let them know that what they do is very important to the survival of every single individual on this 166 square miles. And so, Mr. Speaker, I don't even know if I can find the words to describe how I actually feel at this moment. To know that members of my constituency who have been coming to me on a regular basis since 2018 and asking about this very issue, concerned in the current economic situations that we find ourselves in, wondering what will become of them, that we can put all of those fears to rest by making this move that we are making here today. I want to say publicly to those persons who are going to benefit from this, thank you. And I want to say, in whatever department you find yourselves in, thank you for the service that you have given to this country time and time again. Like politicians, it is a thankless job. I know. I used to be in the civil service myself. It is thankless. But we do not come to the world for thanks. We do what we have to do because it is what many of us are called to do. Not that we wake up in the morning and decide that this is what we are going to do. Some people think so. But we are called to do certain things. And you have to do it to the best of your ability, regardless of what may come your way. And so the same way that we can pat each other on the backs as politicians, and I heard a lot of glowing things over the last couple of days, we must also find time to do the same for those persons within the civil service who really continue to do the work that they do at a high level. And so I just wanted to put that out there as a person who knows what it feels like to wake up and to know that there's a bit more security to what you're doing, and puts you in a better position to help your families and in some instances your community at large. And so I believe that those people now can go out and think about it, Mr. Speaker. They can go out, they can go to the credit unions, they can begin to do the little repairs on the homes that they wanted to do. They probably could buy that vehicle that they needed to get in order to get them to the job in a more timely manner. All of these things have little spin-offs. And when human beings are confident, and I don't want people to miss this, because when people are confident, they excel, they're more progressive, they're more productive, and that can only augur well for the society at large. And so this is, in my mind, probably one of the most exciting, but probably one of the most influential things that we've been able to accomplish in the last 2 years. It might not look like one of the sexy things, because I know lots of people like to see things, that they can touch tangible things. They want to see buildings, they want to see roads fixed, they want to see all of these kind of things. But this, Mr. Speaker, this touches people at the core of their lives. Security, the ability to plan ahead, the ability to see a future. This, to me, is what it is all about when you talk about creating a better life for your people. This is at the root of it, giving people a sense of security and peace of mind. And so I want to commend all of those persons who would have been working on this, because I know this would not have been an easy task, knowing the very numbers, the sheer numbers of people who are going to benefit from this. But I also want to put this out there too, that after this exercise is done, that the next step, if it is for us to be motivating people to come to work, to do that which you are supposed to do, then, Mr. Speaker, I think if we have to do that also after this, it puts me in a position where I would have to wonder what more motivation could a person want than to know that they are secure in what they do. It is up for us now to move to the next steps. It is up for us, and when I say us, I talk about not only the persons within this room, I talk about the entire civil service, all aspects of government that have to work together to ensure that the mantra of a better life for our people, is real, and it's real to the people on the ground. The civil servants have a role to play, as they themselves know very well, but we have to ramp it up now in terms of what we do. You know, I sit and I watch what is happening around the world. And Mr. Speaker, as the world becomes more insular, and it is, people are, again speak in pure Bajan parlance that people understand what I'm talking about. Everybody breaking for themselves. Everybody around the world. And it is important that we begin to understand that every single part of government has to see with one focus. That if we are supposed to deliver things to people, doesn't matter what side of any political party they are on, you are going to deliver things to people. It cannot be that the job or the weight of that is only on the people leading the institutions, because the institutions are all connected. They always talk about the chain, links within the chain. They make it either strong or weak. And so therefore, with a step like this, it is incumbent on the other parts of the chain to also deliver to people in a timely manner things that we are supposed to do. Sometimes you can talk about it as customer service, if you want, if that is the easy term. But for me, individually, I always say to people, it is what is inside of your heart. Do you see what you do as being important? Do you see yourself of being part of making positive change for a country that has given you everything that you have? And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that if every single one of us, opposition included, if we see that as what guides us when we come to work, when we go to play, whatever activities that we find ourselves in, then things like this take on a whole different meaning. It takes on a whole different meaning. And I want to appeal to the people of this country. Do not take lightly aspects and moves like this. Like I said before, they might not seem as illustrious as new roads and sky-rise buildings and all of these things. But this act, children benefit older folks who have to be taken care of by others. I mean, I can spell it out for you, but I don't think I have to. But it is important that we see how important things like this mean to human beings and to their ability to be engaged and also involved in pushing this country forward. And so I support this, and I wouldn't take up any more of your time, Mr. Speaker. Just enough to say that this is, if I were still a singing man, I would probably sing "Oh Happy Day." But seeing that I don't anymore, I would just simply say on behalf of the people who I represent in St. Philip West that I know who are going to benefit from this, my friends, oh happy day. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Honourable Member St. Joseph. Please turn on the mic, sir.
I like the all automatic kinds, you know. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution do not pass.
Question that the aforementioned resolution do not pass. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed.
Mr.
Order.
Speaker.
Order number 15, sir. In the name of the Honourable Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, to move the passing of a resolution to approve the Public Service Teachers Amendment Order 2020.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Public Service Teachers Amendment Order 2020 and the resolution in relation thereto do not pass.
The question is that the aforementioned resolution do not pass. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This resolution do not stands passed.
Order number 1, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Investment, to move the second reading of the Representation of the People Amendment Bill 2020.
Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I will not be very long with this particular amendment to this very important piece of legislation, the Representation of the People Act, Cap 12. I do, however, want to begin by saying, sir, that this legislation relates to perhaps the single most important exercise that we have the privilege as citizens, as Barbadians, as individuals to carry out. And that is our exercise of and participation in democracy. Sir, many of us will remember, for some of us it was more recently, for some not so recently, but the first opportunity that we had to participate in something that for many of us we long anticipated the opportunity to do. When I reached that age where I could be a part of something that the founders of this Barbados Labour Party fought very hard to allow all of us to be able to do, as new members and owners of a new Barbados. When I first had that opportunity, it was a very exciting morning. And my parents, me being the last of 3 girls, woke us up early and said, it's time. And we all walked up the road. I believe at that time it was the Haggett Hall Pilgrim Holiness Church, and made our mark. at that time in the constituency that is now St. Michael Southeast. And I say all that, sir, to say that the way that we manage and the way that we continue to allow and encourage and facilitate people's exercise and participation in democracy is important. It is perhaps the single most important thing that any government will do and will carry out. And while that practice happens for us on average every 5 years, one of the things that we continue to say and we continue to want to expand is the notion of democracy. The idea of democracy, the fact that it is not, in fact, something that you go and do every 5 years. That, in fact, when a bill goes to Joint Select Committee, when we bring a green paper that then becomes a white paper, when we have numerous consultations on the policy that government is proposing, all of that and citizens' participation in that is a part of the exercise of democracy. And certainly, sir, I have not seen a more consultative and therefore a more democratic administration in this country than this current Barbados Labour Party administration. And much of what we have sought to do, and I dare say we've been able to do, is to demonstrate the fact that democracy is not about one day every 5 years, but is in fact about expanding people's opportunity to be a part of the democratic process, to say what they feel, to be a part of the decision making, to be a part of the information gathering, because we need to know who, in whose name, and what are the characteristics, and what are the needs, and what are the desires of the people whom we represent. And only from that, it is only from that kind of information and that kind of participation that good, sound, effective policy can flow. So, Mr. Speaker, the representation of the people at CAP 12 from 1991 lays out the terms under which people are able to exercise their right to vote in this country. And it covers everything from the management of the National Register of Electors to how that register is transmitted, to who may form a part of that register, and related matters. Now, Section 13 of that Act, sir, requires the annual publication of the registers of electors. Section 14 requires the publishing of a revised register and a register for elections, a revised register of foreign service electors, and a register for elections for foreign service electors entitled to vote at any election. Section 9 of that Act identifies those people who should remain registered as electors and those that are to be deleted from the register of electors. And before I come, sir, to the specific purpose of these small amendments to this bill, I have to say that the gravity and the importance of the exercise of every citizen's exercise of their democratic right and democratic freedom is one that we have to guard very, very carefully and very closely. It is not a small thing. In fact, it is perhaps one of the most grave examples of disenfranchisement that one person can perpetrate against another. It is not a small thing to cause a person not to be able to participate or to exercise their right to vote because of actions that would see them not be represented in the register of electors. So that for whatever reason, a person may seek, through some nefarious activity or some activity that is in fact nefarious but seems to be innocent, cause a person to not be able to exercise that right. And so we have to be vigilant. And we have to set extremely high standards to make sure that no Barbadian or person who is entitled to exercise their democratic freedom is not so disenfranchised. So each year, in accordance with the Section 13 that I previously mentioned, the Electoral and Boundaries Commission publishes a notice that indicates that the register of electors for each of the 30 constituencies is published on January 31st, and it is available for inspection at the offices of the registering officers for the constituencies. So right now that register is available digitally, but when we say available digitally, it's on the laptops of the registering officers, and is available at the constituency registration centers and in hard copy at the public library, as well as at the department's office at Warren's. Now, sir, the question of access is an important one. And in the year 2020, the definition of access must change. Now, just because you print a document and you cause it to be placed at a location does not mean that you have done, arguably, your duty to provide access as we understand it in the year 2020. Sir, this Barbados Labour Party administration has realized that the definition of access and the mandate of enfranchisement means that we have to meet people where they are. It means that through our modernization project, it means that through our work on improving the ease of doing business and through many other initiatives, we have sought to bring Barbados forward into the 21st century and beyond so that we reduce the burden, the cost to everyday Barbadians of doing the things that we now take for granted. So it means that we've made sure that the police certificate of character application and access is now available online. It means that we've gone ministry by ministry, agency by agency, to make sure that we begin the process of digitizing records, to make them more accessible, to make them more readable, to mean that we can more closely analyze the data and develop policy from information that is right at our fingertips, but that has not been properly used before. And so, sir, this issue of access with respect to the work of the Electoral and Boundaries Commission is no different. Just like we are moving to an e-planning system in town and country planning so that people can make their applications online, just as we are moving to digital stamping of plans so that you don't have to have a manual stamp and then put the plans back in the post and have people wait weeks to be able to carry on with their business. This, sir, is in the same vein. So not only is it the case that currently the constituency registration centers and the public library and the department's office in Warrens carry hard copy of the register of electors, but the commission also publishes the list of names to be deleted from the register of electors twice yearly. Now, for each deletion, the legislation currently requires the commission to publish the list of names 4 times in the daily newspapers, which amounts to 8 publications per newspaper each year. Sir, another part of the importance of making sure we use less paper, making sure that we move into an online environment, has also to do with our fiscal and financial reality. Now, COVID-19 has meant, sir, that, and we've all gone over the numbers in this honorable place many times in the last few weeks, but it has meant that as an economy that is extremely open to what happens in the external environment, it has meant that as an economy that sees over 40% of its economic activity coming from the tourism sector, that we have estimated as much as a $400 million hit in our revenue. It means that we've had to increase expenditure in social protection so that people who suddenly found themselves separated from their work could survive. It means that we've had to make tremendous expenditure in the retrofitting of Harrison Point and similar facilities. It means that we have increased expenditure in a number of ways while we have not been taking revenue in. So, sir, every cent counts in an environment such as this. And the fact is that notwithstanding the reduced rates agreed with the publication providers, the cost of the annual publication of names, as well as the publishing of the notice relating to the publication of the Register of Electors, is approximately $482,000. That's no small amount of money. And we have sought in every instance from Cabinet, where we no longer carry those very thick files and heaping mounds of paper with us into the Cabinet office, but we do our business electronically. We've sought as far as we can to reduce the costs, both financial and environmental, of having to print lots of paper. And we are seeking to be able to make similar efficiency gains across the work and business of government. So not just in order to save on the costs of publication, but also in order to improve access and similarly move the work of the Electoral and Boundaries Commission into an online environment such that people have more ready access to understand, to know, to have exposure to the information that affects their democratic right, that speaks to their franchise as citizens of this country. This bill would therefore amend the Representation of the People Act, Cap 12, to make better provision for the use of technology in the electoral process, and to make better provision for the distribution of vital information by the Commission through the use of electronic technology. So it means, sir, that there are certain amendments that are required in order to introduce the notion and the idea and the use of technology throughout this act. And I will make very brief reference to the few short amendments. It means, sir, that we require the amendment of Section 2 to change the definition, to introduce a definition of electronic technology, which means an electronic system that has electrical, digital, magnetic, wireless, optical, electromagnetic, and similar capabilities used to create, generate, send, receive, store, display, or otherwise process data and information. It means, sir, that we also need to address the section that relates to the general duties of the Commission, so that we include at B of Section 3.1b, that the Electoral and Boundaries Commission will establish and implement procedures processes, and practices for the efficient implementation of this act, and where required, the Commission may use electronic technology for the discharge of its functions under this act or under any other enactment giving powers to the Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Sir, Section 9 relates to the right of electors to remain registered. It is something, sir, that Barbadians must and do hold dearly. It is something, as I said, that we have to remain ever vigilant about, because, as we've seen in other jurisdictions, sometimes the desire for influence may overtake, in some people's minds, their understanding of the right and proper functioning of their role and responsibility under the law. And so, with respect to Section 9, the right to remain registered, at 9.2, the Act makes reference to the fact that for the purposes of deleting from the register the names of persons referred to who may have died, who may not be a Foreign Service elector, or who may have become disqualified for registration, the Commission shall first publish once in the Official Gazette and twice at intervals of not less than 7 days apart by way of electronic technology. So it means that it removes, sir, the requirement to have these printed as paper documents. But it also expands the access, sir. It means that there are lower costs of transmission, so nobody has to get in a vehicle to drive to different places to drop off a paper copy of something at the public library or in Warrens. It means that those costs are reduced to the taxpayer, to the Barbadians, sir, that you and I and all honourable members represent in this place. So, sir, the bill goes through the various places, whether Section 13 that relates to the Register of Electors and the revised Register of Electors and how that is to be published, how changes to that are to be made known to the public. And finally, Section 71, which relates to the mutilating, altering of notices and altering of lists and registers. And it simply inserts in those places reference to the term electronic technology, so that rather than having to spend $482,000 in order to make this information known to the public, that cost is removed and people have better access to the information that affects their very lives and existence and enfranchisement in this country. But sir, before I wrap up on this matter, I also have to make reference to the matter of altering notices and altering registers, because the data protection bill that has passed the Senate, and for which there was a joint select committee that saw much consultation with the people of Barbados and with all stakeholders, gives us and allows for the protection of people's information. And so the protection of people's information is not just for the sake of it. The protection of people's information is also about their right to privacy, their right to a reasonable expectation of how that information is to be used, and also their right to remain registered and to remain included and engaged in the electoral process. Now, sir, this is an act that is a few decades old, and at the time, the fine for mutilating and altering notices that related to the Register of Electors was seen as a simple act of vandalism, of tearing down a list. And so at Section 71 of Cap 12, the Act, in its current form, makes reference to a fine of $250 for that action. But what I want to emphasize, Mr. Speaker, is that this is not a simple act of vandalism of a piece of paper or of a document. And so the bill, in introducing electronic technology to this section, so by saying that any person who, being a member of the public, alters, changes, or modifies any list, register, or document which is published or transmitted by means of electronic technology for use by the public, is guilty of an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $250. That is not just a simple act of removing public property. A person who removes a name, who modifies a name, who makes any change to the list to the register of electors, is committing, I would submit to this honourable place, a very grave offence against the very nature and spirit of democracy in this country. And so just as the Data Protection Bill suggests that for similar misuse of personal information and similar efforts to disenfranchise Barbadians, that the fine be $10,000, we would suggest that by amendment to this bill, sir, that the fine at 2A of 71, as well as 2B, similarly be in the amount of $10,000. This is a serious matter. And we have to send a very serious message that we do not take lightly, and we will not ignore efforts by any party to disenfranchise Barbadians in the act, the exercise of the very thing that we hold dear in this country. So, sir, with these very few words, I believe that while these amendments to this act are few, and while the need to move to electronic transmission and electronic management of these matters for which the Electoral and Boundaries Commission are responsible is not perhaps a very large matter, it is an important one, because it is a part of this administration fulfilling the mandate of enfranchisement and access and inclusion, and sending the message that we believe that democracy is something not to be taken for granted. It's something to be held up, it's something to be held on to and defended. And so with those few words, sir, I'd move that this, I'd like to beg that this bill be read a second time.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, sir. Just a couple of brief comments to use the occasion of the debate on this amendment to the Representation People Act. And firstly, I would want to take the opportunity to repeat, and not for the first time repeat, call I have made for public financing legislation, elections in Barbados, functioning of political parties in Barbados. In fact, I do recall that the honourable member who last spoke in one of her more recent submissions also made a call for campaign financing, electoral financing. I would like to put it in a broader frame. I think the honourable member who last spoke also rightly identified democracy as a value that we hold dear, want to cherish, and one identified by her also as not being one which should not be taken for granted. There's a cost. There's a cost attaching to the practice of democracy. There is a cost attaching to the preservation of democracy. But I think the price can never be too high. I heard this reflection offered in recent days. It is something to which I really do subscribe.
I remember speaking to changing this to 10,000.
And that is, we cannot pursue positive development and in a proper and truly meaningful fashion unless we do so in the context of democracy, democratic practice. Hence, Mr. Speaker, the name attributed to the most recently established party in Barbados, People's Party for Democracy and Development, or more popularly known as the People's Party, PDP. We believe in that. Democracy has a cost that attaches to it, to establish, to practice, to preserve it. The price can never be too high. And I think somehow I hear the echo of those sentiments coming from the bosom of the last honourable member who spoke. The price is worth it. Campaign financing, electoral financing can help us to avoid, and where it does exist, to curb any drift towards corruption in the practice of politics and government and governance in Barbados. And the ugly specter of corruption raises its head across many lands. We've seen some evidence of it here, over which we're all concerned. We need to curb it, we need to eliminate it, eradicate it. And I think implementation of establishment of proper legislation on electoral and campaign financing can help us to achieve that end. Certainly it can help to serve to sanitize the process of policy formulation. We need to do something about the pipers who want to call the tunes in Barbados. We certainly need to do something about those who have had some success in calling those tunes in the past, those who would like to call some now. We need to deal with these pipers. And they come, Mr. Speaker, these pipers in various shades, various hues, skin tones, and with various class characterizations. They come bearing wherewithal that the state itself does not have, that political parties don't have, that poor politicians do not have. They want to call the tune. We need to stop them in their tracks, because that is a detriment to the practice and preservation of a democratic political culture in Barbados. I want to loudly call for, and I repeat that call, for electoral and campaigning and campaign financing in Barbados. I would be less than honest if I sat before making this utterance as well. I still don't think it is right that today, on this day, what is it, 28th of July? The only political party in Barbados funded by the state is a party in government. Whatever legislation, and I haven't found any legislation, But whatever administrative arrangement allows for that has to be reviewed, has to be changed. And one might say any new party emerging after the last general election is not entitled. Fine, you can make that case. But that's not the only thing to be considered. One has to consider that there is another long-established party in Barbados that fought the last election and attained a measure of the vote. Yet that party, with a long history of establishment, and certainly with some great measure of credits attaching to itself for what level of development we have attained in Barbados, is unfunded by the state. The only political entity in Barbados funded to any extent by the state is the governing party. That cannot be right, where whatever existing arrangements now serve to give us that kind of outcome and scenario, we need to review and change that. We're talking about democracy. We're talking about preserving it. We're talking about perpetuating the practice of a culture that allows each of us politically to find importance and significance and value attaching to himself or herself in terms of how we govern this country. Second thing for which I want to make a call is for serious consideration to be given to fix dated elections in Barbados. A fixed date for elections in Barbados. If the right to vote is as valued as we say it is, each person who qualifies under the legislation so to express himself or herself, if that vote is as valued as we say it is, if it is in the democratic context, the most important asset in the firmament of our political world, then it cannot be that one person and one person alone can determine the date on which I express that vote. Now, I have said that before. I say it today, and I will continue to say it. That is something to which serious consideration should be given with a view to changing that. If we think that the practice of democracy is a context in which we want to govern ourselves, if we want to establish credible institutions that constitute part of that culture, and if we think that the right of the individual vote is a significant thing, then it cannot be the best thing that one person determines when we get to vote. That puts that one person, that puts that one party represented in the embodiment of that person in a position of serious advantage and sets all others as a disadvantage. Well, we've come this far with the system that we have had, and it has served us pretty well. But I think the fact that we're debating this measure here today in this legislation suggests that we know that there can always be improvement. And I believe an area of improvement which ought seriously to be considered is the matter of having fixed dated elections. We know, as it happens in some other places, we know when we are going to vote to get the opportunity to express that democratic right, so hard earned and won. And no one individual, man or woman, great or small, I do not think it is the best that one person should have the power to determine when that happens, because that one person then has the opportunity to affect the outcome of elections in that way, by choosing the moment most advantageous to them and the party or parties that they represent. I feel that strongly. The government of the day has the numbers to make the change if they consider it a necessary and worthwhile change. My duty is to raise these issues, but beyond duty, it is my conviction that it brings us to a place of betterment in terms of the practice of our politics and the enhancement of our democratic architecture here in Barbados. I feel those things strongly. I repeat those calls: electoral and campaign financing, assistance for political parties, and fixed dated elections in Barbados, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the sitting be suspended until 2:15 p.m.
15 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands suspended until 2:15 p.m.